You paid for my wedding, now get lost. I'll call you when I need more money, my brother said while Mom laughed. So I went to his wedding, walked up to the altar, and humiliated him in front of everyone. My name is Juan David, and it all started years ago when it was just the three of us, my mother, Miriam, my younger brother, Ismail, and me. My father left when we were little, and from then on, I became the man of the house. It wasn't a decision I made enthusiastically, but something life imposed on me. I was 16 when I started working to help with the bills. Mom worked as a seamstress, but what she earned barely covered food. Ismail, who was 5 years younger than me, was a cheerful child, always with a smile that made me think everything was worth it. We were close, like real brothers. We played soccer in the street, shared silly jokes, and dreamed of a better future. I wanted him to have what I couldn't, an education, an opportunity. At 18, I left school. It wasn't easy, but someone had to support the family. I got a job in a furniture factory, and although the salary wasn't much, it was enough to pay the rent, utilities, and some food. Mom continued sewing, but her health wasn't the best, and I didn't want her to work herself to death. Ismail, on the other hand, continued in school, getting good grades. He was intelligent, much more so than me, and that filled me with pride. Every night, when I arrived home exhausted from work, I'd see him studying at the dining room table, with his notebooks scattered around, and I'd think, this little guy is going places. I'll make sure of it. When Ismail finished high school, I told him I wanted him to go to university. Not just any university, but a good one, the kind where rich people send their children. I wanted him to have a bright future, so he wouldn't have to break his back like me. Mom agreed, although she always said it was a lot of money, that we couldn't afford something like that, but I insisted. I had saved every peso I could, and with a loan and extra shifts at the factory, I managed to pay his tuition at a private university. Ismail was thrilled. He hugged me and told me he would never forget what I was doing for him. "Brother, I swear I'm going to make you proud," he said with shining eyes, and I believed him. The first few months at university were like a dream for him. He told me everything: the professors, the classes, the new friends he was making. I listened to him with a smile, even though sometimes I didn't understand what he was talking about. He mentioned names of books and theories that sounded like another language, but I loved seeing him so enthusiastic. Mom was also happy. She said Ismail was our ticket to a better life, that with his degree he would lift us out of poverty. I didn't ask for anything in return. I just wanted him to be happy and not have to go through what I did. But little by little, something changed. I don't know exactly when it started, but I noticed that Ismail wasn't the same anymore. At first, they were small things. When I got home, he wouldn't greet me with the same warmth. Sometimes he was so engrossed in his cell phone, talking to his new friends, that he wouldn't even look at me. I began to feel like I was some kind of shadow in the house, someone who was only there to pay the bills. But I let it go. I thought it was normal that he was busy with university, that he needed his space. However, over time, things got worse. Ismail started talking about his university friends as if they were from another world, as if they were better than us. "My friend from college are on another level. Juan David," he'd say. "They have cars, they travel abroad, their parents are business owners." At first he said it as if he were impressed, but then it began to sound as if I, weren't up to his standards. One night, while we were having dinner, he asked me why I never finished high school. "Aren't you ashamed?" he said with a chuckle that hurt me more than I expected. Mom, who was serving the food, didn't say anything, but I saw a smile on her face, as if she agreed with him. I try not to take it personally. I told myself that Ismail was changing, that university was exposing him to a new world, and that maybe he needed time to find his balance. But his comments became more frequent, more hurtful. "How do you manage to live like this, Juan David? Working in a factory, with no education, with nothing. Oh, my friends wouldn't understand your life, brother. You have nothing in common with them." Each word was like a knife, but I kept paying for his university, his clothes, his outings, because that's what brothers do, right? Sacrifice for the ones they love. Mom, who had always been my support, also began to change. At first, it was just subtle comments. "Ismail is going to go far, Juan David. He has a future." But then they became more direct. You should learn from your brother. He's studying. He's going to be somebody important. I didn't understand. Wasn't it enough that I supported the house, that I paid the bills, the food, Ismail's university, that I broke my back so they could have a good life? But I never said anything. I swallowed the pain and kept going. One day, Ismail came home with some news. He was getting married. His girlfriend, Daniela, was a girl he had met at university. She came from a wealthy family, according to him, and was studying the same thing as him. She's perfect, Juan David. He told me with an excitement I hadn't seen in him for years. She's intelligent, beautiful, and her parents have important connections. He showed me a picture of her, and although I'm not one to notice those things, it was obvious that Daniela lived in a world very different from ours. Expensive clothes, perfect smile, a life that seemed straight out of a magazine. I was happy for him, truly. I thought that maybe marriage would mature him, that it would make him appreciate what we had as a family. But then came the problem, the wedding. Ismail wanted a big, elegant wedding, something that would impress Daniela's rich friends and his university classmates. He wanted a luxurious venue, gourmet food, a live band. But he didn't have a penny. Everything he had spent at university, on his clothes, on his outings, had come out of my pocket, and now, for the wedding, he had nothing. One night, he sat down with me in the living room. He was different, kinder than he had been in months. Juan David, I need to talk to you, he said in that soft voice he used when he wanted something. He explained that the wedding was important, not only for him, but for his future, that Daniela and her friends expected something big, and that he couldn't disappoint them. If I don't have a wedding like they expect, they're going to think I'm a nobody, he said. Then he looked me in the eyes and added, but if you help me, I swear I'll change. I won't treat you badly ever again. We'll be the brothers we used to be. I don't know if it was his tone, his promises, or simply my stupid hope of getting my brother back. But I agreed. I said I would pay for the wedding. Everything, the venue, the catering, the musicians, Daniela's dress, Ismail's suit, everything. I took out another loan, worked extra hours, and put every peso I had into that wedding. Mom was delighted. It's the right thing to do, Juan David, she said. It's for Ismail's future. But I didn't do it for his future. I did it because I wanted to get my family back. The months leading up to the wedding were hell. Ismail went back to his usual attitude, but worse. Now that I had paid for everything for his wedding, he didn't bother to feign kindness anymore. When I tried to talk to him, he ignored me. When I suggested going somewhere like a soccer game or the movies, he looked at me like I was a weirdo. Why do you want us to go out, Juan David? We're not on the same level. I have a career, a girlfriend, a future. You're you. His words burned me, but I kept thinking that things would get better after the wedding. I tried to get close to him in every way possible. I invited him to play video games like we used to when we were kids. I invited him to the pool for a beer, anything that could bring back a little bit of what we used to be. But he always had an excuse. I'm busy, Juan David. My friends don't do those things. I don't want them to see me with you. Each rejection was like a slap in the face, but I kept insisting like an idiot who doesn't want to accept the truth. The last straw came one night, a few weeks before the wedding. I went into his room to suggest we go to the movies. I wanted to see an action movie that I knew he liked, but he was on a video call with his friends, laughing and talking about things I didn't understand. When he saw me, he rolled his eyes. What do you want? Juan David, he said in a tone that made me feel like an intruder in my own house. I told him I wanted to invite him to the movies, that we could spend some time together. And then, without lowering the volume so his friends wouldn't hear, he said, I don't want to go. I don't want them to see me with you, a loser with no education and no girlfriend. You already paid for the wedding, now get lost. I'll call you when I need more money. The silence that followed was deafening. I felt the air escape from my chest. But the worst part wasn't what Ismail said. It was what I heard from the hallway, my mother's laughter. I turned and saw her standing at the door with a cruel smile on her face. Leave him alone, Juan David, she said without a hint of remorse. Your brother is on another level. He'll have much more money than you. You're just a loser with money. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. The words caught in my throat, and I could only leave the room, close the door to my room, and stay there in the darkness, trying to understand how my family, the people I had given everything for, could treat me like that. I felt like an idiot, as if all my effort, all my sacrifice was worth nothing. But at that moment, something inside me changed. I wasn't going to let them walk all over me anymore. I wasn't going to let Ismail and my mother get away with it. The wedding was just around the corner, and I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to miss it for the world. But I wasn't going as just another guest. I was going to make Ismail and all his class's friends see who he really was. I was going to make him pay for every word, every mockery, every slight. And I was going to do it when he least expected it. The day of the wedding arrived, and the city seemed to vibrate with the energy of an event that, according to Ismail, would be legendary. I woke up early with a churning stomach, but with a clarity I hadn't felt in months. I knew exactly what I was going to do. I put on my best suit, a simple one I bought with my own money, not like the luxuries I'd paid for Ismail. I looked at myself in the mirror and said to myself, "Today is the day, Juan David. Today they pay." The venue was on the outskirts of the city, in a place surrounded by gardens and fountains that looked like something out of a movie. When I arrived, I saw the luxury cars parked at the entrance, each one more expensive than the last. The guests were beginning to arrive, dressed in suits and dresses that probably cost more than my annual salary. They were Ismail and Daniela's friends, the important connections he talked so much about. I felt out of place, but I didn't care. I wasn't there to fit in. When I tried to enter, the guard at the entrance stopped me. "Your name, please?" he said, checking a list on a tablet. "Juan David," I replied in the firmest voice I could muster. He frowned and checked again. "I'm sorry, sir, you're not on the list." I felt the blood rush to my head, but I wasn't surprised. I knew Ismail would do something like that. Instead of arguing, I took out my wallet and slipped him a couple of bills. "I'm the groom's brother." "There's a mistake on the list," I said, looking him in the eye. The guard hesitated, but took the money and let me pass. "Don't cause any trouble," he muttered. I smiled to myself. He had no idea what was coming. Inside, the hall was even more impressive than I had imagined. Tables covered with white tablecloths, centerpieces with exotic flowers, waiters moving around with trays of champagne. The guests were chatting and laughing, all with that air of superiority I'd learned to hate. I saw Daniela in the distance, radiant in her wedding dress, surrounded by her friends. Ismail was nearby, in his impeccable suit, greeting his friends with hugs and laughter. Mom was by his side, wearing a dress I'd also paid for, smiling as if she were the mother of a king. Nobody looked at me. Nobody recognized me. It was as if I were invisible, and that only fueled my determination. I stayed in a corner, observing, waiting for the perfect moment. The ceremony began, and everyone took their seats. The officiant, an older man with a solemn voice, began to speak about love and commitment. Ismail and Daniela stood before the altar, looking at each other with smiles that seemed rehearsed. I felt my heart beating fast, but not from nerves, but from a strange calmness. I knew what I was going to do, and there was no turning back. The moment of marital consent arrived. The officiant looked at Ismail and asked him, "Do you take Daniela to be your wife, to love and cherish her all the days of your life?" Ismail, with a triumphant smile, replied, "I do." The audience applauded, and the officiant turned to Daniela. But before she could speak, I stepped forward. It was now or never. I walked up to the altar with a firm step, ignoring the surprised looks. I snatched the microphone from the officiant's hands, who looked at me as if I were crazy. Ismail noticed my presence, and his face immediately changed. "What are you doing here?" he shouted, trying to maintain his composure. "I didn't invite you." But I didn't look at him. I looked at the audience, at those friends of his he admired so much, at Daniela and my mother, who was pale in the front row. "Good evening, everyone," I said in the clearest voice I had ever used. "I'm Juan David, Ismail's brother. I know I'm not on the guest list, but I couldn't miss this special day. After all, I paid for all of this." I paused, letting my words sink in. A murmur went through the room, and I saw Ismail turn red, trying to come closer to take the microphone away from me, but I moved quickly, keeping him at a distance. "I want to tell you a story," I continued. "Since we were children, I have worked to support my family. I pay the household bills, the food, the clothes. I paid for Ismail's university education, an expensive university where he met all of you his very important friends. I pointed to the audience, and some lowered their gaze, uncomfortable. And when he told me he needed a wedding to impress Daniela and all of you, I paid for that too. Every peso for this venue, for the food, for the music, for that suit he's wearing, came out of my pocket. The silence was absolute. Daniela stared at Ismael with wide eyes, as if she couldn't believe what she was hearing. Mom tried to get up, but froze with her hand over her mouth. Ismael kept trying to interrupt me, shouting things like, "You're just jealous." But I didn't stop. And in return for all that, do you know what I received? I said, raising my voice. Mockery, contempt. My own brother called me a failure. He told me I wasn't up to his level because I don't have a university degree or a girlfriend. He told me to get lost, that he would only call me when he needed more money. And my mother, who is sitting right there, laughed in my face and called me a loser. I looked at Miriam, and she lowered her head, unable to hold my gaze. But the final blow came when I discovered that I wasn't even invited to this wedding. I, who paid for everything, wasn't worthy of being here, according to Ismael, because he was ashamed for people to see him with me, someone without an education, someone who doesn't fit in with his rich friends. I paused again, letting the truth settle in. Then I looked directly at Daniela. And you, Daniela, did you know that Ismael doesn't have a penny? Everything he's told you, everything he's promised you, is a lie. He's not the successful man he claims to be. I paid for this facade. The room erupted in murmurs. Some of Ismael's friends started laughing, not with him but at him. Poor guy, someone shouted from the back. Liar, said another. Daniela turned to Ismael, her eyes full of fury. Is it true? She asked, her voice trembling. Ismael tried to defend himself, stammering something about it not being so simple, that he had plans, but she didn't let him finish. You lied to me, she said, and her voice resonated in the hall. You always told me you were successful, that you had everything under control. You're a fraud. Before the officiant could say anything, Daniela turned to him. Excuse me, but I don't, she shouted and ripped the veil from her head. She ran to the exit with her friends following her, while Ismael chased after her, yelling that it was all a misunderstanding. The audience continued murmuring, some laughing, others looking at Ismael with contempt. Mom stood up, tried to approach me, but I stopped her with a look. No, Mom, I'm done with you. I stepped down from the altar, dropped the microphone on the floor, and walked towards the exit, ignoring Ismael's shouts, who called me envious, wretched, everything he could think of. But I didn't care. For the first time in years, I felt free. I had told the truth, and now everyone knew who Ismael really was. The wedding he wanted to be his great moment had become his greatest humiliation. I left the venue without looking back. The cool night air hit my face, and for a moment I stood in the parking lot, listening to the echo of the shouts and laughter inside. I didn't feel guilt or regret. I felt justice. I had given everything for my family, and they had treated me like trash. But now they were the ones exposed, and I was the one who could walk with my head held high. That same night, when I got home, I started packing my things. I didn't want to spend another minute in that place where every corner reminded me of the contempt of Ismael and Miriam. I packed my clothes, my few belongings, and a couple of photos from when we were kids, from those days when we were still a real family. Mom arrived shortly after with a distraught face. Juan David, how could you? She said with tears in her eyes. You ruined your brother's wedding. You ruined his life. I looked at her, and for the first time, I felt nothing. No love, no pain, no obligation. No, Mom, I said. You ruined my life. I just told the truth. She tried to plead with me, saying that Ismael would change, that he needed me, that we were a family, but her words no longer had any power over me. I'm not your ATM anymore, I told her. Find someone else to pay your bills. That night, I went to a small hotel on the other side of the city. The next day, I cut off all contact with them. I stopped paying the rent on the house, the utilities, everything. I knew Ismael had no way to support himself, and Mom couldn't do it alone, but it wasn't my responsibility anymore. For years, I had sacrificed myself for them, and all I received was contempt. It was time to think about myself. Over time, I got a better job in another city, far from the memories of my family. It was a construction company, and although the work was hard, they treated me with respect. For the first time, I felt like my effort was worth something. I saved money, bought myself a small apartment, and started building a life that was just mine. I didn't have a university degree or a girlfriend or rich friends, but I had something Ismail would never have: dignity. Sometimes I heard rumors about them. Ismail never recovered from the humiliation of the wedding. Daniela left him for good, and his important friends abandoned him when they realized he had nothing to offer them. Mom tried to contact me several times, leaving me voicemails where she cried and asked for my forgiveness, but I didn't respond. Not because I hated them, but because they weren't my family anymore. My family were the people who valued me, the friends I made at my new job, the people who saw me as something more than a wallet. Now, when I look back, I feel a satisfaction I can't explain. It's not joy at their misfortune, but pride in having freed myself, in having chosen my peace over their lies. And if anyone asks me if it was worth it, I'll only say one thing: every penny I spent on that wedding was worth it because it bought me my freedom. Subscribe for more daily stories.